Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Till the Wheels Fall Off. I'm Matt.
I'm Paige.
Concluding our 3-part series on anger today. This has been a fun thing. I like these series. I hope that you do too. But anger today, insofar as the anger you feel after you've left a relationship. I think this one kind of trips people up because you would think that after you leave a relationship, what you get is peace and calm and closure, and you can go about your life. You can just carry on and not have to think about this anymore. That's not the way it works. Generally, it shows up after someone has left, and it is very confusing for the person holding that anger because they don't want to feel angry. Why am I feeling this? What is it trying to tell me? And what the hell do I do with it? In the last episode, it's kind of simple, I guess, compared to this one, because I was around. If you're repairing, I was around to provide that justice and accountability, and it helps people with closure as they look at the point of their anger because they can see a reason to forgive. But what if there is no reason to forgive? What if there's no forgiveness given? What if there's no reason to forgive anybody? What do you do with that? We're going to talk about that today. The anger that you feel on the outside of a relationship. And as it turns out, it is much more about finding meaning and what this journey has taught you over the time that you've experienced it. What do you do with this stuff afterward? And we have experience here, even though we're still together, because this is not the only relationship in our lives that has been affected by these dynamics, as it turns out.
Correct.
So we've got experience here like we do with a lot of the other stuff we talk about, basically everything else we talk about. But these are fun.
I do like these series. I've enjoyed breaking things down for people. I think it's really helpful depending on where they are on their journey. So
yeah, it's tough to get it all in one episode. It'd be like a 3-hour long episode because we get fan mail all the time. It's like, can you talk about this rather specific instance that I'm going through? This is sort of like bean soup theory. If you know anything about internet lore.
Well, what about this?
What about this?
What about that? What about that?
My very unique and specific events. This is what these series kind of cover. And I think it's helpful for people because this does hit a large piece of the pie chart of our listeners, people on the outside of a relationship that are feeling rather angry.
I do think that anger is telling you something somewhat different depending on where you are within your life as well.
I'd agree with that.
And that's why we're discussing it in bits and pieces.
Going to be a good one, though. We're going to cover all the different aspects of this, what's going on neurologically. How do you make sense of this? Where does your resolution come from? How do you find closure? What's this anger telling you? What is it trying to teach you? And how do you let it teach you? I think most important.
Ooh, that's good.
So let's get into it. Hey, thanks to SoberLink, today's sponsor for our show. SoberLink's an awesome tool for rebuilding trust, rebuilding accountability, providing visibility, and the much needed transparency in your relationship. Listen, if you're someone like me, you're in a relationship, you're a couple that listens to this, and alcohol's been problematic for you, let's get serious about doing something about this problem. My guess is that you haven't tried this yet. I would encourage you to try everything. If you've tried moderating, if you've tried swearing off of it, if you've tried not being around it, if you've tried locking yourself in the basement so that you don't have to encounter it and you have failed, let's give this a shot. This is an awesome tool that provides real life feedback. You set up a network of people that get notified every time you use it. So if I'm out there in the world and it's noon and Paige and I have agreed that I've used this thing at noon, she's going to get an alert right away. What does that do? Well, on one hand, it provides me accountability. It's going to be harder to sneak off and go drink if I know I've got to use this thing 3-4 times a day, however many times you guys agree on. On the other side of that, it's going to provide your spouse or partner peace of mind that your words no longer can. Because trust is lost in buckets, but it's rebuilt in tiny little droplets. It takes a long time to rebuild this. But SoberLink can help because it provides real data, something they can trust. You don't want to have this fight anymore about, have you been drinking, have you not? Let me smell your breath. Hey, pull that one out of the drawer, the breathalyzer out of the drawer, and why don't you use that one? Because you're going to argue with them. You're going to fight about it. You're going to say, why don't you trust me anymore? Let SoberLink be the bad guy. They have no problem being the bad guy here. Let them provide the data so that you can get to the real work of having these important conversations, the stuff we discuss every week here on the show, and rebuilding that trust that is so vital and crucial to the building of any relationship that matters in your life. And it's not just data that it reports. It's also got some awesome tools to make sure that the person using this thing is supposed to be. It's got military-grade facial recognition technology, and it is tamper-proof. And it's been hard to get into these things traditionally. They're expensive, right? But SoberLink has recognized that, and they've done something about it. If you sign up for a 1-year plan, You can now get this thing for $19 a month. That's right. You can just rent it. No longer you have to purchase the device. You can just rent this thing for as little as $19 a month. And since you're an awesome listener of Till the Wheels Fall Off, you can get $100 Visa gift cards sent to you whenever you sign up with our link. Go to soberlink.com/wheels. They will send you a $100 Visa gift card that you can use in anything you want. Apply it toward your holiday bills, Tufo merch, whatever you want. Again, it's soberlink.com/wheels. While you're online, head over to tufo.com, find out about our free Facebook community. One of the very many things that we have to offer. We've got a lot of free resources. The community is probably the most valuable of all of those. Thousands of listeners of the show come in, talk about what they're going through, share their journeys. You don't have to feel alone anymore. We have got you covered there, and it is totally free. We've also got merch, new merch, which we're terrible hosts. Neither of us are wearing right now. We've got hoodies, and we've got
Mine's in the washer.
T-shirts, and we've got water bottles.
Ooh, the water bottles are awesome.
Yeah, all kinds of awesome stuff. Go to tufo.com if you want to support the show and rep the show that you listen to every single week and love. You can do that there. Or if you think our merch is ugly, but you still want to support the show, click on our social media profile, click the little link tree there, and you can buy us a cup of coffee. Give as much or as little as you like. Or if you want to give us nothing and just listen, that's totally fine too. We still love you. Makes no difference to us. But we do appreciate all the support that you guys give us.
Yes, thank you.
The greatest thing you could do is leave us a review. Honestly, that means everything. That's how people find the show. It becomes discoverable for other people. So if you want to pay it forward in a really meaningful way, just leave us a review.
Or share the podcast with friends and family, because that's also a way to get the word out.
Yeah.
Because you never know who could be struggling with this.
Let people know about it. If you found something from this, share it with other people. Help them find it too. Helps us, helps them. It's a great thing. All right, let's get it going, Paige.
Okay, so this episode is kind of similar to what we discussed in the last episode. The last episode was about anger in recovery, when you're with somebody who is in recovery, and how that was like basically my experience and how my anger came out years later, and this is what we had to do to deal with it, and so on and so forth. This is kind of similar, except you're doing this alone, basically. It's not about rebuilding your relationship. It's the anger that's going to come out whenever you have more safety, whenever you're able to see things more clearly, you have more space to process. It's when like everything just starts to come out and you're able to recognize what you've been through. I think it was complicated when I was in a relationship with you while we were trying to rebuild it, and the anger came up because it was like you were still doing some things from like similar to active addiction. And it was just really wonky. It was really still chaotic when my anger was coming out, because I was like, why do I still feel angry? This kind of anger, I think, might be more clear. I think that people who have been outside of the relationship, when you have that anger, it's like, oh, wow. Okay, now I understand why I'm angry. You know, early on in the recovery, I'm like, why am I angry? That doesn't make sense. This is just a little bit different. But a lot of people that we work with, there's this stage that they go through after they've left the relationship where this anger comes up. And it's mainly because of the clarity that they see. But I really want to break down the things that people might be feeling, the anger that they're feeling, and why they're feeling it. Not just because you're feeling safe, not just because you're out of it, not all that, but like we're going to just go through all of these different things, different stages, different ways that it might make you feel like, oh shit, I'm normal. Like I totally understand that. I hit with that. This is validating. I get that. And then we're going to help you kind of understand how to get through it and how to process it. Because like we say, you don't really get over it. You don't make it go away, but we are going to help you cope through it.
Yeah, I think that you've highlighted something massive there that sort of breaks people's brains whenever they hear about this, especially if you've never actually been through it before. But you would think that the remedy to all of this anger you feel would be the dissolution of that relationship, or in our case, someone getting clean and sober and taking accountability. You would think that these things are supposed to be like remedies. Like these things are supposed to make that go away. Like if you have a headache, take a Tylenol, problem solved. Don't have to worry about it anymore. It doesn't work that way.
No,
It's
you have
really
to get to the root of it. You have to get to the root of it. But also, since you've suppressed the anger for a long period of time, or things weren't changing when you were in the relationship with the anger, because it's like, it's quick. You know what you're angry about, like in that moment, but nothing was getting changed. Now it's like, okay, I can see this more clearly, and I can like really dig deep into where this anger is coming from, and changes are going to be made. It's actually I know that anger sucks, but it's actually a really beautiful place to be. It is part of the process. It is part of your healing process, and it is an important part of the process, which we will get through later on.
Yeah, I would challenge and posit that if you think that you've avoided this, you're wrong. At some point, it will come up in its own way.
Yes.
Maybe you've got a special makeup that you really don't hold grudges. You don't get mad about much of anything. This will show up in a different way. This emotions buried alive never die. This will show up in some way, shape, or form. So even if you think like I'm a happy-go-lucky person, like I'm deeply spiritual, like I could make sense of all this rather easily, it's still important for you to understand and listen to what's going on and what's maybe some of the ways that your mind has been changed without you even realizing it. It's important that you really start to tune in and listen to this kind of stuff and understand it at the very least. Some people will feel this more deeply, more extreme. Some will have more of a muted experience with it, but we will all experience it.
Right. In some shape or form.
Yeah.
And it could come out months later after you leave. It could come out years later after you leave. Like it could come out in different relationships. It can come out at some point, but it does need to be addressed. And that's what we're here for. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk about the shame about the anger first, because a lot of the times when we feel angry, we feel shame because for some reason in our society and in our world, we have been told that anger is a really bad emotion to have. It's negative. It shouldn't be there. Don't feel angry, which is unrealistic. We're humans. We are meant to feel angry. I do not condone being aggressive, but being angry is important because it's all about it's telling you something. It's teaching you something. But a lot of the times you will feel that shame from the anger because you might feel like, oh my gosh, I chose this. I should be over it. Why am I still mad? Like I chose leaving the relationship. I chose to get out of this. I chose all of that. Yeah. Not choosing the past. No, we'll get down that in a minute. And saying like, I should be over it. You know, why am I still angry? But I think you need to let yourself process that. Allow yourself to feel that anger and know that it is acceptable and it's okay to feel that way. We've been told many times, even in these relationships, like, don't be angry. You can't be angry. It doesn't feel good to be angry. And that's, like Matt says, it's emotions buried alive, never die. And they're going to come out, and they're coming out right now. That's why you're feeling the anger. I just wanted to talk about how the shame about anger is okay, but let's just try to like reframe that.
Yeah. In addition to shame, I feel that just talking with people over the last several years that have been going through this, there's a whirlwind of emotions that are they're anger adjacent as well. Like there's guilt. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's regret.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of other things that are floating around this. You're right. Because some people feel like it's self-inflicted. Like if I could have just hung out and stuck through it a little more, if I could have just dealt with it a little longer, then I wouldn't be feeling what I'm feeling now, which is that's not correct. You would be feeling it in a different way. We've covered the different ways you experience it. No one gets out of this alive. No one gets out of this without feeling the anger. I think it's tough. Sometimes I know I've talked to people that aren't really sure what they feel. And a lot of times it will be grief. And a lot of times it will be regret. It will be shame, but these are all anger adjacent. At the root of a lot of these things is anger.
Yeah, for sure.
Pick up a feelings wheel if you don't believe me.
Yeah. Oh, the lovely feelings wheel.
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of want to break down why you might be feeling angry, because sometimes you may feel anger and you're like, oh, I don't know why I'm feeling angry. So we're just going to break down all of the different ways you might be feeling angry or why you're feeling angry. The first one is going to be anger from clarity. So whenever you have distance from the things that have harmed you, you're going to gain some more perspective. You're going to be able to see things more clearly. You're going to be able to see your patterns more obviously, the patterns that were happening within the relationship. You're no longer going to minimize what was going on, because being an outsider looking in is you can see way more clearly than when you're in it, because the brain works that way. Like when you're in chaos, it just works in a way. Matt can just explain that a little bit later. What our brain does in these situations and why it's harder to see it when we're in it. So whenever you leave, you're going to gain more perspective. You want to add anything to that?
No, I was going to say, I think that there are almost two types of this anger, where you have anger at the person that caused all of this. Like, because you can look at it at times and be like, if they only could have done X, Y, Z, I wouldn't have had to make the decision to uproot my family and leave. And now I have to start my career over. And like, you can be really angry at them. But the other side of this is kind of what you're talking about right now, which is anger at yourself.
Oh, no, that was the next one. This
Yeah.
was just anger in general of seeing the patterns of what your relationship was. This is looking at the relationship as a whole, technically, is seeing, because you don't really recognize the patterns when you're in it because it's the cycle that continues to happen over and over again. But when you're
That's
outside
just
of it,
your life.
you know,
don't
I
really think much about it.
we did an episode on 90 days and what it can do for, it's like 90 days of habits, 90 days of clarity, 90 days of removing yourself from a situation. If you can have 90 days to gain a new perspective and to see the patterns, your life will change because you can see things differently. We've had people who have removed themselves from their relationships for 90 days so that they can see what it was that they were actually in. And yeah, anger is going to surface because you're actually going to see what's going on. And this isn't to scare anybody either. Like if you're still in it, like, because that anger is going to come out if you're in it, if they're in recovery, if you're out of it, whatnot, it's going to come out no matter what, because you're not living by your values. Like that's really what it boils down to. When you're not living by your values, that anger is going to surface.
Yeah. There's a reason we get angry. Although we've touched on this in a couple of the episodes before, but I think that's a really great way of looking at it is that whenever you feel anger, a lot of times it's your mind and your body's way of saying like something is wrong in my environment. Someone has done something, they've crossed the line. And it's really interesting. Like if you think about what's the purpose of anger, it's a mobilizing emotion. It's supposed to drive us to action.
Yeah,
sometimes this can be action in confronting someone else who has wronged us. Sometimes it can be action in saying like my environment is not fit. Something needs to change in my environment.
Nothing changes if nothing changes. That means that I need to change.
And this can drive cultural and social change. And it's really fascinating, but it's gotten such a bad rap where we look at anger like, oh, don't do that. And I think I talked about this before. I think that a lot of the tabooness of anger and where a lot of this stuff comes from is more about how comfortable other people feel around people that are angry. I think that it makes us confront something that we don't want to confront. It's like, don't bring your problems to my doorstep. You just need to be happy. I don't want to deal with this shit. I don't need to hear about this.
It is a reflection of you.
It's a really selfish thing that we do.
Absolutely.
And we're not there for people who feel angry and like,
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Listen and like hear them out and, maybe confront some of the things that are going on in our lives that we just haven't wanted to look at. But it's a very transparent emotion that opens a lot of doors that people aren't ready to open. And I think it's awesome. I think in a lot of ways, like it's a really, really valuable emotion that gets overlooked and gets this boogeyman kind of label on it, and it shouldn't.
Right. But see, in this anger that's happening after the fact, right? You're thinking, well, if it's not happening in my life right now, why am I angry about it? It's because it hasn't been dealt with.
Yeah, there's no closure here, really.
You haven't. It's really to help you gauge your values and your boundaries. You use it to set boundaries. You use it to move forward with your life. You use that anger as like, okay, what was I in that I don't want to be in again? What do I not want to happen within my life going forward? And that's, again, like a beautiful, empowering thing, because you're like, all right, I'm looking at this anger as something that's going to empower me, not set me back. It's like, what happened that I don't want to go through again? And that's going to help you set your boundaries going forward. That's what the anger's purpose within this part of your life is.
Yeah, we're going to talk about purpose throughout this episode, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think the ways that we find meaning and we derive meaning from events that happen in our lives. I think that there's one way we've always framed this for a lot of people. I say we, just kind of like colloquially, all of us, like the collective we, have said, everything happens for a reason. I guess that's one way to look at it. That's never set well with me personally. I can look at some terrible tragedies that have happened, not just in my life and other people's lives. And I'm like, for a reason? I don't know about reason here.
Yeah.
But can we find meaning through that? And I think that that's a much bigger exploration and personal integration of how these events shape us and how we do derive meaning from them and how they change us moving forward. And I think that's very much the case here, because for the previous 2 episodes that we've done on anger, there's resolution to some degree, right? I think in the first one, we can look at, okay, it's about pattern recognition. It's about stating what reality truly is. This is what your anger is trying to teach you. In the second one, it's more about closing the loop with justice and accountability and transparency and change behaviors moving forward. In this third one, it's more ambiguous. It's much more ambiguous. It's like there's no real clear resolution for this anger. Like, listen, I've removed the threat, but I also didn't get justice. I didn't get accountability. I didn't necessarily, in some degree, yeah, you do get to see, you kind of open the door that you didn't want to open. You see what things really are. You talked about how you identified this, pattern recognition and everything else. But I think that, like, we've talked about the book more times than I can count on this show, Man's Search for Meaning. And Man's Search for Meaning was written by Viktor Frankl. And Frankl talks about how we find purpose and how we find meaning through life. And he identifies 3 ways. The first one is by creating work or doing a deed. We can find meaning through our work. I think that a lot of people do this. We all do. And work doesn't necessarily just mean like what you do for a paycheck. This can be the work that you do as a parent, like that, the meaningful work of a relationship, which is kind of the second one. It's by experiencing something or encountering someone. This is experiential values. This is about the meaning that we derive in personal and interpersonal relationships. We love people and how we raise children. But the third one is the most interesting. I think it's the most powerful thing that came out of Man's Search for Meaning, which is by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. And this is, I think, what Frankl discovered more than anything. The most profound part of Man's Search for Meaning was that it's the last human freedom to choose the meaning that we derive in our suffering. Unimaginable suffering. This is a man that was in a concentration camp, and how do you derive meaning from that? And it's a beautiful way of looking at things. I think that the Stoics have talked about this as well. Marcus Aurelius, I was reading Wisdom Takes Work, Ryan Holiday, very, very good book, by the way, which maybe I'll cover in one of my own episodes at some point one day, but talks about Marcus Aurelius's famous quote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle is the way this is oftentimes paraphrased." And so when we look at anger without resolution, without justice, without this closed loop and this nice little packaged, hey, here's everything, it's difficult, because what you're going to have to do is figure out, what is this trying to teach me for the next 20 years of my life? What lessons did I learn here that will shape me? How can I integrate this as part of my character and the way I look at my values, and I set relationships and boundaries and clarify my life and what I don't and what I do want and don't want moving forward? And that's much more the story here. It's much more existential in that regard.
Right. It's about shifting your perspective. And it's what we try to do within a lot of our episodes as well, is to help people just kind of shift their perspective on, like, this didn't happen to me necessarily. It's like, well, what am I going to do with this, and how do I move forward with it, and building that resilience?
Yeah. It's like, did it happen to you or did it happen for you?
Yeah.
And you get to make that choice.
Right. Right. And a shift in that perspective really does make a difference in your healing. And it's not about forgiving. It's not about forgetting. It's not about any of that stuff, or like completely accepting everything. Or like tolerating or whatnot. It's really just looking at it as like, okay, what can I do with this, and move forward with that?
Yeah, like something we've talked about from day one here is like authenticity wins. Like, I hope that something that's always come across is that, like, what you see here is what you get, like with us anyway. Mm-hmm. It's like, we are what we are. Like, we're not putting on a show. This isn't performative. Like, these are our real thoughts. This is stuff that we think, and it lands or it doesn't. If you don't like us, okay. If you do, cool. That's great too. I think what's really interesting to me, and like one of the coolest things that I've witnessed, is that, like, in the beginning, our thesis was like, let's just teach people to live authentically. Like, that's something that I think that we've done well. If there's one thing we can show people, it would be that. And I think that that's where this becomes really integral to your healing, is that you have people take this thing that they never wanted. Like, I never wanted any of this shit to happen to me. I never wanted to have to leave a relationship or go through that shit. But here it is, and now it's part of my journey. And how do you make them proudly accept that about themselves and integrate that into their lives moving forward? And how do you have that create meaning for them moving forward? And anger is just a part of that. A lot of times it's the first sign that you get that, like, kind of taps on the window at night, and it's like, hey, guess what? There's something you need to look at a little harder over here. And you may think it's something small to avoid it in the beginning, but it becomes such an integral part of your story as you move forward. And this will become part of your story. This will become part of the story that shapes you and shapes the way that you show up in relationships moving forward, shapes the way that you parent, shapes everything. And this is you. Authentically, this is you. And I think that the sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be. Yeah. But I understand why you would fight it. I understand why no one wants this to be their reality, and why some people will run the other direction as far as they can. But what they'll find is this thing just follows you. It will never stop.
Yeah. But I think that's also part of the process, is to fight it just a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just like automatically accept it. It doesn't work that way.
Some people have an easier time than others. And I've always wanted to know, like, what is that I think some people just have, I don't know, maybe just higher agreeableness. Like they're more willing to accept kind of life as it comes. And there are others that, like me, kind of row against the tide a little bit fucking harder. Like, no, you're not taking me over there.
I think we both do that. We're both pretty fucking stubborn, babe.
But I think that there's some people I've watched just like, man, just with such class and dignity, like accept this and like walk forward with it. I'm like, it's admirable when I see that happen. And then there are people like me that go kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
I think that no matter what, you'll end up in the same place.
Yeah.
Is how hard do you want to make it on yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, I'm going to go back to all the ways that why we might be angry. No, that was great. I think we were going to discuss that anyway. Another thing that might pop up is that you might be angry at yourself for staying as long as you did, for excusing the behavior as long as you did, for hoping for as long as you did, for tolerating, for allowing. That's just not. I know that this is part of the process, and you know how we talk about how like shame is fuel for addicts,
sure,
whatnot. I believe that for us as well, is that whenever we do feel that way, when we have that anger, when we have that shame, it's like, ooh, okay, well now I know what I don't want to do again. And that's what's going to help me push forward into it. And it's also, I also have to tell myself, I don't know what I didn't know. Like a lot of the times we didn't know what we didn't know back then. There are a lot of programs out there that, teach people how to tolerate certain things within a marriage, and they stay a lot longer than they, in my opinion, should be staying. So then when they come across us, who's speaking on something completely different and telling you it's okay to leave a situation that's harmful, there will be a little bit of shame that comes from that, because you're looking in the past and you're like, oh my gosh, I actually did. I'm seeing all these patterns. I'm seeing more clearly. I'm recognizing what I stuck around in. I put my children in these situations, but again, you don't know what you don't know until you know, and you learn to accept that. And then you learn to acknowledge that, and you build from that, and you look at what you've been through. You're like, you know what? Now I know what I can do going forward. And that's the empowering piece of it. It's not being stuck in that shame spiral. It's not being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. You can have that feeling, but then what are you going to do with that feeling? That's what's important.
Yeah, and there's not a whole lot of them, but there are some just like bullies on the internet and maybe even in your life. I find that oftentimes the biggest impediment to women like coming out the other side of this are other women who shame them for going through it in the first place. I've seen this a lot. I've seen like mean girl energy in comment sections and stuff like that. I'm sure that men do this just the same. I just see more of it because this is our audience. But shaming you for not knowing in the first place. It's like, what the fuck? As if we all come stock with this, like this software, the same software.
I didn't choose this life.
Where it's like, I was, yeah, you know what? If we want to roll back, it would have been really nice if I had recognized this right off the bat, put up boundaries, like gotten out of this before I was stuck in it for 30 years, whatever else. But there are people out there who are really big assholes about that. And I think that there's a lot of shame, and it makes people really timid to come out and talk about it, because there are those people out there who are just assholes. And if you come across those people, just block them. Just block them. That's the best thing you can do is delete and block. Yeah. Bye. Goodbye.
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I've learned that. As long as you're living authentically, you'll realize that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, can we agree that the best case scenario is that we didn't go through it in the first place? Sure. But the next best thing is that once you recognize it, you have acknowledged it, done something about it. And like,
learn from it, man.
We should never, ever beat someone up for what they didn't know.
Builds up your resilience. And I can probably speak for 99% of the people that get in these relationships. Do you think that we got into these knowing that our partner lied to us, that they were great at manipulating us, that they were awesome at like sugarcoating and also love bombing and all? Like, this stuff wasn't discussed when you got into these relationships. Like, we know more now, even as a society, what's going on within these relationships. So I just don't like when people are like, well, you knew what you got into, because no, you don't know what you got into. It's not like people chose to go down this path. Y'all are really fucking good at what you do, and you know this.
Yeah. I think that there are fewer of these people than there probably were 15 years ago, but they're still out there.
Oh yeah,
don't
for
get
sure.
me wrong. And I know that keeps some people from coming forward, because you don't want to have someone rub your face in, the mess on the floor and say, I told you so, you should have known better, whatever.
Block. Yeah. And that's why I don't like to use the word tolerate or allowed, even though we say it a lot. I can't really figure out how to say it in a way that I don't know, is more meaningful or makes more sense. And maybe you and I can have a discussion on this, because it's not like I allowed you to do these things or I tolerated it. It was just, it was there, you know, it was chaotic. It was crazy.
I think tolerate's maybe more fair than allow.
You think?
Yeah. I think once you know, then what else do you call it other than tolerate?
Okay. Once you know, yes, it would be tolerating. I agree with that. But I didn't know this stuff back then.
Before you know, it is what it is. It's manipulation.
Right.
It's lying. It's someone being deceitful. And
Right.
it's intended for you not to know. All the actions are designed so that you don't know. What else do you call that? Like
Yeah.
you were,
But
someone running game on you.
basically, if you're angry at yourself, I think that's part of the process. I really do. I don't think it is a bad place to be. I think it is part of just going through it. Just don't stay there too long. You're going to, and once you get into once we discuss on how to get through the anger or whatnot, it'll help you get through that piece of it. But I think that it's important for us to go through that. It's important for us to acknowledge that, because it's going to help us move forward and actually build resilience and, build healthier relationships. Okay. The next one that I wanted to go through is you might start to be angry about the lies. You're, like I said, you're going to see more clearly outside of the relationship, and you're going to recognize it. Oh, wow, that was a lie. Oh, that was a lie. Oh, that was a lie.
Oh yeah. This just starts to float to the surface.
It does.
And you'll start to triangulate the different stories that were possibly floating around, or people start to come out of the woodworks with things that they knew behind your back. You'll find out a lot of times, you'll find out about mistresses and stuff like that, but you'll also find out about where someone actually was, or the real depth of what was happening. I see this a lot when people split up, and let's say that the person who has a substance problem moves out, and then you start to you go through a spring cleaning, for instance, and you start to find all of their hiding spots, and you start to realize how bad this really was.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to get really, really pissed off.
Yeah.
At them, at yourself, at the entire situation, at everyone.
Yep.
Anyone that comes into your orbit is catching shit. You're about to catch some strays, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's important for you to acknowledge that, again, all of this stuff is so important for you to go through and not shove it down. You need to feel that anger, because you don't want to go through that again. Lies. We've talked about this so much, and I've tried so hard to just throw it out there so much, is that the lies really do mess with your sense of reality, and they harm you so much in your future, in your relationships with others, your relationship with your kids, your relationships with yourself. The lying is very, very impactful. So yeah, we should be angry about that. We should be angry that people have lied to us, especially our most intimate partner, the most important relationship in your life. Yes. Be angry that you were lied to.
Yeah, these are the people that had all the passwords. These are people that had the keys to your heart. Figuratively, I'm saying, not the actual passwords. But anyway, maybe they do. Yeah. But these are the people who had all your trust, and they've broken it. And that is the ultimate betrayal, right?
Yeah, and you're going to see this more clearly when you're outside, when you're out of it. When you're in it, you don't see it as clearly, because, again, the toxic cycle is there. There's lies, there's love bombing, there's this sense of peace, the honeymoon phases, and then it comes back in full circle. We talk about the toxic cycle actually in our program. And it's very, very hard to see when you're in it. So when you're outside of it, I didn't recognize all of the lies and all of the shit that was going down until many years later. And that's when the anger really, really hit. So if you're getting out of the relationship, you're going to start seeing a lot of this stuff way more clearly, and it's going to hit you a lot harder.
Yeah. People are really good at managing chaos. What looks like chaos to outsiders, for instance, but to you is a fucking Thursday.
It's your normalcy.
It's just normal. And
you minimize it.
Think about it if you've ever taken a hiatus from work, or maybe you have taken a break from a really tough relationship. I have a very toxic relationship with my career and some other people around my life. And I've taken space away. It's not until you're away for at least a month that you go, oh, fuck, this is really bad, huh? And then everyone around you is like, yeah,
I told you so.
I've been telling you this, this is crazy. And then you realize that you go, that motherfucker, holy shit, they've been taking advantage of me. They've been doing this. They've been saying this shit. This is not normal. And you have this this epiphany all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And it's just, you feel fucking rage. You're like, holy shit, they've been taking advantage of me knowingly. I've been dealing with it without even recognizing it, just because I'm trying to manage the day-to-day around here. And you become so attuned to just managing chaos that you don't realize how bad this shit has gotten.
Yeah. And speaking on your experience, because it's just kind of This made me think, with that anger that you had, the rage, once you removed yourself and you're witnessing it, it doesn't help you to go back to that person and tell them while you're angry,
Fuck no.
right? Like that doesn't even, you've finally recognized a pattern that, or a cycle or whatnot, that you can't do anything to make them see the harm that they've done.
No, and they're going to be really unwilling to admit any of that stuff or take accountability for it or anything else. Oftentimes, they equate time passed to an apology. So if you do come back to them, my experience, and what we're talking about is a family member of mine who struggled with a lot of this stuff and represents every one of the toxic dynamics that we talk about. Check every box, every single one. And in times when I've had space and I'll go back and like, you think maybe it's safe now, maybe some things have changed. I've changed. And so we assume that maybe they've changed too. But remember, these are emotionally immature people that are not doing the same inner work that you've been doing for all these months. You've been changing, you've been exploring, you've been trying to make sense of this and find meaning and purpose. And you've really been taking accountability for your role in your own suffering. They haven't done any of this shit. None of it. Not a fucking bit of it.
They may claim they have.
None of it.
With words.
So when you come back, what they hear is like an olive branch kind of thing where it's like, oh, they're admitting that they're wrong. And then I knew I was right. They're not, they have learned nothing. Like when you go back, you're going to be, you take yourself back to square one.
Yes.
It's like you show up thinking that we're in a different place because you are internally, but remember, they haven't changed. Connection takes two people walking toward each other. If it's just one person chasing after the other all the time, looking for that accountability or looking for that maturity or that growth, you are not going to get it. Like, what does their pattern say? For the last 40 years of my life, this person has not done this. But here I am, fooled every fucking time when I show back up thinking that they're changed, and they're not. And if there's anything, they've gotten worse. Maybe they've just gotten worse over time, not better.
But you're not able to see that clearly until you remove yourself from the situation.
Yeah, you remove yourself from it, and you start to see it for what it really is. And then you do get upset, and then you grieve quite a bit too, because you're like, this sucks. Like, this is my life. And that comes to like really resonate, and you'll be watching a movie or be out in public and you'll see like people connecting, whether this is like mother and son or like a parental relationship, or it's spouses or children and like parents. And you see people just connecting at like a really natural, like deep level. And you start to get pissed. It's like, what the fuck's so rotten about me that I don't deserve that? Like, that I can't get that. Like, what's going on with me? What can I change? And then you start to explore more. What can I change about myself to get that? You start to look at the different ways that you can bend and change yourself, or like, remove some boundaries or values so that you can have that. And when you start to sacrifice chunks of yourself over and over and over time until there's nothing left. That's what the ultimate result of doing this. But what I can tell you on the other side is that when you do remove yourself from it, one of the first things, you're going to feel sadness and then grief, and then you're going to get fucking mad. You're going to stay mad for a while. And then you kind of have to find a way to process meaning. Like I talked about earlier, hinted at, like with the Frankel stuff and the Marcus Aurelius stuff, like that becomes the way as you start to find meaning. And like, what is the ultimate lesson here? What was this really trying to teach me? What is this? How is this? Okay, if I can't have that relationship, then how can I apply this lesson to other relationships that are worthy of all that time and energy and everything else?
Okay, let me ask you this. You went back to this situation multiple times throughout your life.
Countless times.
Was it during, which phase was it during? Was it during the grief phase, the anger phase, or the sadness phase? Like, where do you feel like you needed to get past in order to not go back to that cycle?
I think I can deal with anger pretty well. I'm pretty good at anger. Anger is something that I can feel pretty deeply. And then I'm really good at, like, one of the first concepts that I really became familiar with over a decade ago was like acceptance is the answer. And this is very much like the obstacle is the way kind of thing. And I was really good at finding like my meaning through anger. The grief was by far the hardest thing.
But going back, when you were going back into that cycle, what phase do you feel you were in?
Oh, when you go back, I should have listened to you harder. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You already asked me that. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
It's exactly the same question.
I would have a question.
So when I go back, what phase am I in?
Yes. When you had gone back multiple times to that specific relationship, to that specific cycle, were you in the anger phase? Were you in the grief phase? Like, were you sad? Where do you feel like you felt like you needed to go? Because you said you felt like they were changing because you were changing. So you would go back.
Yeah.
You assumed that, right? Where do you feel like in your healing process or whatnot, where were you? Were you angry or were you in your grief and like sadness?
In those moments that I had gone back, I was in a really like collected and I think peaceful state.
Okay.
Because I had I had processed through all of those things, through the anger, through the grief, through all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go back, I'm like in a very peaceful, content state. I'm like, I'm in a good place right now. Maybe it's time that I can go back and like, see how everything's going.
Ooh, okay.
And so it's like once I've gone through all this, it's almost like drugs and alcohol relapse. This is the insanity of it, right?
Yeah, right.
I've done this more fucking times than I can count where I've gotten on a substance and then coming off a substance sucks. Like you go through the withdrawals, you go through the pain, you can't fucking sleep. And just about the time that you're finally sleeping through the night and you're able to get through the day, you're like,
maybe I should just try that out again. I think I'm okay. I think I can handle this. We got this.
That's exactly it.
It's
and so that's what I would do is once I'd made peace with all of it, then I'm like, hey, like I've learned a lot. And I'm like, I don't know why, but instinctively, I want to share it with them. I want to see what they've learned. And then they will do what they do. They will show you why you walked away in the fucking first place. And then you will get mad beyond your wildest dreams at yourself, at them. And it starts over. God damn it. It starts over every single time.
So what happened to get you to the point of saying, I'm not going back to that cycle again because I have more clarity now than ever?
Oh, I'm a slow learner. I don't
think you're a slow learner.
For me, it was like having to see it 100 times.
I know.
I
was
wish
an outsider looking in. I
wish I had a better answer than that. I wish that I had some answer that I was like, oh, I was walking through the woods and I had this. No, it was just it was touching a hot stove so many fucking times that I burned my fingerprints off to where I'm like, that's bad. I don't need to be doing this anymore. It's just pattern. I had to see the pattern for what it was. I am a slow learner. I am empathetic. I want to extend an olive branch. I want to have a relationship with that person. And it's like, there's something that drives me and like feeling like I hate feeling that people are mad at me. And it's like, I don't want to be the bad guy in people's story. I don't want to be the villain necessarily, like I want people to like me. I feel like it's always my job to take the lead and repair. I feel like it's always my job. This goes back to being parentified as a kid. This goes back to like having to be the responsible one.
That. Yeah.
And so like, I think people do this in their day-to-day relationships too. There's usually like a responsible one who's always making the peace. And then there's this other one who's always being the pain in the ass. And my guess is you're like me. And so you're always going to try to make that peace. But it's just a matter of being burned enough times before you're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. But you could just take my word for it.
That's what I'm saying.
I've done the work for you. I can tell you how the story ends.
How it's going to end. Yeah.
And it's not good.
Yeah.
In my experience, I've seen this work for other people. They will reach out when there's actual change. You won't have to do this anymore. They will generally reach out.
Yeah, but also you have to be very wary of that I don't think that's real change. That's manipulative.
You will see it. And maybe it's reaching out is not the right word. You'll see it. Like you'll know change when you see it. And I think that people have asked me that in so many roundabout ways over the years in comments and emails and stuff like that. Like, how do you know when it's real? You'll just know. Like you really do know in your gut and in your core. And you will also know because you've seen the performative versions of it before. If you're anything like me, you've seen the fake versions of this more times than you can count. You'll know when it's real. Like you'll know. And you won't have any doubt. Right.
And so I'm going to ask you these questions probably a year from now. I think that you will have much more clarity than what you would have now.
Probably.
I know we just went off on a complete different tangent.
Well, this is the first-hand experience. Like we always talk about, we have experience. Like it would, like we have to show you what, like we know.
Yeah.
Like this is this experience we're talking about. Like I've been through this same thing with people.
And for me, like when it comes to closure and accountability and all that, just removing myself was enough closure and accountability that I needed because I didn't want to be surrounded by people who completely went against my values. I'm not going to sit there and chase that accountability and that closure. Like it was enough for me to just remove myself to move on and not get myself back into that cycle because I know me getting myself back into that cycle is not healthy for anybody. So I stopped it long before Matt did. Obviously different dynamics and different relationships, but it was still easier for me to just cut loose and say like, all right, this is just it. And I'm going to accept it for what it is and move forward. But I did go through grieving too. I went through sadness. I went through anger. I went through all those things. The only difference is that I didn't go back because I was like, I'm not going to go back because I don't believe that. I mean, I did like many years ago, but I didn't do it multiple times.
I will say this though. You asked me like, how did you know? Like when did you know that like this wasn't going to get better or something. To that effect.
Right.
Like I didn't have some like magical moment, but then I thought about it. There kind of was like, I have encouraged people on the show. I'm on the record saying this, like turn over every stone. I don't think that at the first sign of a problem in a relationship, you walk away from a relationship. I don't think that's how great relationships are built. They're built through getting through difficult times, perseverance. And maybe there's something to be said about like the generation of today that are just now coming into families and marriage and things like that, that could use a little more of that.
Yes,
but the problem with lessons like this is that the people that need to hear that won't hear it. And the people that don't need to hear it, take it straight to fucking heart. And so what I did was I had like these ideas in my mind. It was like I could see how the movie was like playing out. And it was like we would have a blow up. I would distance myself. And it's like, well, we haven't tried this. We haven't tried really sitting down and like truly talking about the problem. I haven't approached it in this way, you know, like having a real honest conversation, owning my part. And then it was like therapy was a big one. So it's like, oh, let's go sit down with like an impartial third party, a therapist, because I know what I've seen and like, but maybe I'm being biased. I remember sitting in a therapy session and them like breaking every rule in therapy and in accountability and everything else, and like giving someone the chance to tell the truth and having them just completely lie. And it was like at that moment I was like, you know what? Fuck them. Like there's no way this is ever going to work.
But there were moments in those sessions where accountability had been taking place. There was one where you were like,
yeah,
oh.
a little bit. Like,
Look, there's something happening here. And then I'm like, okay. And then the shoe dropped. So,
yeah, they feed you a little bit of table scraps to make you feel
that's what makes it so complicated.
But you will have moments like that if you're willing to look at them and see them that will come up. So maybe this happens in a mediation or in court, or maybe this happens in therapy or something like that. But like people will show you what they're made of in those moments.
Yeah. But being out of it and is going to help you see things a lot more clearly than when you're in it. We just know that from experience on this part and like with our relationship and other relationships.
If you're still in it, again, you have become really, really good at, you know, habituation and like making sense of this. This is just a normal, this is a Thursday for you. This is just another day of the week.
It's not, guys. It's not. It's going to come out eventually.
So with distance, you'll really get the clarity that you desire. And it will actually help keep you safe in the long run from going back to those sorts of situations that have
That's
never
really
been
what that's
good.
about. Yeah.
Like you'll see them for what they really are. Like I've done this like with my job too, like stepping away for like taking a month off or something. And I'm like, I really need to resign. Like this job is not good.
Yeah.
Like this is a bad situation for me. Like this is not good. I hate this. Can't stand this shit. And then it's like you have those moments where like I gotta like do something about this. And then what happens is
your pain tolerance kills me sometimes.
Well, see, there was this concept like we've talked about on the show a lot, but someone put it into I think the packaged it perfectly and beautifully. Chris Williamson talks about the region beta paradox. I think we did an episode on region beta paradox where it's people could be in a situation like a relationship that's like maybe they're not abusive, like physically abusive, and it's not terrible, but you're also not like happy or really in love. You're sort of just there. You're kind of just in those relationships. It would actually be a good thing to be in a worse situation because that would give you the escape velocity to get out of that environment and into something that's truly good for you. Mm-hmm. You do the same things with jobs. Maybe you work a career that's not like terrible, like you're able to live a okay life, but it's certainly there's no upward mobility. It's not what you really want to be doing. It would actually be a good thing for you to lose your job because that would create pain that would cause you to jump. There's also what's called the inverse region beta paradox. And this is for people who have a special mental makeup. Maybe you're like me, where you have such a high fucking pain tolerance. There is no such event. There is no such thing that would drive the pain that would cause you to want to do something different. You have a special mental makeup where you will just find a way to keep trudging, to keep packing on the weight, to keep walking through the mud, taking less, and just plugging along. And there is this dangerous sort of person. And this is people who find themselves in these relationships who carry a massive load.
I was going to say that I think that this has a lot to do with upbringing as well and the family dynamics that you were raised in, where it was normal to be in chaos and normal to be in this type of, dysfunction to where you learn that this is what was normal. So you just push through whatever the hell comes your way instead of making decisions that you know that might actually benefit you more and like are based on your values and what you want in life.
Right. And this is where I think that, like with our listeners, like even though like you're the star, like you're like them, like you're the woman of the show, I think I have more in common with them when it comes to this
I think
particular
you
thing
do
because
too.
you have a very low tolerance for bullshit.
I do.
And have a very high tolerance for bullshit.
Correct. I don't know what, I know you always say I'm the star of the show, but honestly, I think that you relate to a lot of listeners more than I do when it comes to that specific thing, because I really do. I've always talked about like strike 3 or out. Like I've always been pretty high on my standards and my boundaries and things like that, where it's like, I don't want to be a part of that
I
shit.
ain't playing that shit.
And you will definitely turn over every stone until you are like blue in the face. And I'm just like, we don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. As long as you're living by the way you want to live and by your values and being authentic, you don't have to go through all of that shit and all of that pain to become resilient. You can make decisions. You do have options, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that one day you're going to be able, but I do think that the things that you've gone through have definitely built up your resilience and have made you really strong. And like, I don't fault you for the high pain tolerance. I think it's actually pretty incredible, but maybe that's why we work, is that we find that middle ground on how what's tolerable and what's not.
Depending on how you use it, it can be a feature or it can be a bug. In this situation with like region beta paradox, like it can be a bug where you can stay in that pain for so fucking long that you sort of lose parts of yourself, and you kind of lose your motivation for things. You lose that light in you that makes you who you are, and you lose kind of your optimism. And so if the cure for region beta in a normal person is more pain, does that hold true then that the inverse of that is more pleasure and it's more time away? And that's where we talk about the importance of this distance, where it's once you have that distance and you begin to feel what peace actually is, that you go, oh, fuck, it didn't have to be that hard, did it? Like I've been making this way harder on myself than it had to be.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you completely get rid of that part of yourself that is able to carry that too, because there are times when that becomes so valuable. Like I've said this about people in addiction too, and I think it's true of spouses and partners that have to deal with addicts, is that you develop an incredibly high pain tolerance. What I've discovered is that when it comes to work ethic, you can't outwork people like me. You can't. Good luck. You won't do it. Like I will literally work for 2 or 3 days with like no food. I don't care. I will get the job done. I love that feeling. I love working. I will outwork people, and I take pride in outworking people. I can grind and I can hustle and I can do all that shit. And I can talk about it 24/7, and it does not faze me. Work-life balance was the biggest joke in the world to me for the first like nearly 30 years of my life. Where it's like, no, like that's clown shit. No, we work. You work. And then maybe when you're a few years before you die, you can enjoy it. But
I am not fully wired that way. But I love to work.
So I
do have a great work ethic, but I know when to stop.
Yeah, but that same part of you that makes you able to withstand that kind of pain also makes you able to withstand intense emotional pain that comes from relationships. And this is not where you want to apply this stuff, guys. It's not.
No.
You will get railroaded and run over. And I'm telling you, on the other side of it, it is so much more peaceful.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to go through these a little bit quickly. We kind of got on a side tangent, but I enjoyed that conversation with you.
I apologize if y'all can hear this dog snoring.
She has been making noises over there.
Our little dog, little Boston Terrier, has this like little donut that she lays in. It's like this little bed.
It's a little dog bed.
She drags it. She won't accept that she's on the other side of the room. And so she like drags it over here next to us. And then she just snores the entire episode. And I think the mics pick it up. I can't really tell.
I don't know. She just has to be near us. It's really cute.
It's funny.
Okay. So we talked about the anger about the lies. The next thing that you might have anger on is lost time. So years of being in survival mode and in chaos, and a life built around around their addiction, around all the chaos, around all the other things that, aren't, it's just like the minimum, and that's usually just grief. You're going to go through the grieving process about the lost time that you've been through. I grieved that. I went through some of that.
This was very, I think all 3 of the episodes this is probably part of that, right? Mm-hmm. Where you look at the lost years, the lost time, and time that you'll never get back, like straight up, you will never get back, but probably more painful in this third instance, because there is no, like, without finding meaning through like what we talked about with like the Stoics, what they have to say, or Frankl, what he says about finding purpose in this. Like it really was, you could look at it and say, like with me and you, it's like, well, yeah, but the payoff was that we're still together, and like it was for all, not all for nothing. Well, on the other side, in the beginning, if you're rather cynical about it, you'd be like, this was for nothing.
Mhm.
I didn't have to go through all that. And like, what was it for? Like, I didn't get there's no payoff, because we oftentimes look at relationships like an investment. That's how we've talked about the sunk cost fallacy of relationships, where there are so many of you that stay in your relationship just because you've invested time.
Yeah.
And I've literally heard, and I've read the messages where it's like, we've been together for 20 years. I'm not giving up now, but it's been shit for 19. Like, what are you holding on to? Like, what are you valuing here? Like, what is the investment payoff? And that's how we look at it. We look at our time must have a payoff. Like, I'm not going to give the most valuable resource in the world for nothing.
Mhm.
And so when you start to look at like the quote unquote lost time you get from going through all this shit, dealing with it for all these years, and then on the backside of it, you don't even have the thing that you invested in. It's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
It does become a deeper search for meaning, and there is still meaning there that is every bit as powerful as the other avenues that you take to get to this place. But I think it's probably a more prevalent sort of anger that pops up, more common too.
Mhm.
Because you did go through some form of this as well.
Yeah, I did. I also went through grieving of what our lives could have looked like as a normal couple, like being able to have a drink on vacation or sitting on the patio, doing things like that. And I went through that. I talked about this on the show a couple of years ago. I was like, yeah, I was really sad that, it didn't turn out the way that I thought our relationship should turn out. But now I'm like, damn, I wouldn't trade any of that for what we have now, because we have something that's built on honesty and trust, and look, we're helping other people and things like that. So yeah, I went through a lot of that grieving process, but also it's very similar to those in active addiction. Whenever they hit recovery, like you went through a process of grieving as well, of like, I lost a lot of years, I did a lot of things that I wish I wouldn't have done.
Think about how much further along it could be if I'd started all this stuff in my early 20s as opposed to, my late 20s, early 30s.
But again, you don't know what you don't know until you know, and then you use that as fuel to push forward. But I do think you need to feel those feels before you actually start to make changes and accept what has happened.
Yeah, it's a normal thing to grieve this sort of stuff and to process it. But until we have a time machine, you shouldn't be beating yourself too much over something that you can't fix right now. So how do we make meaning out of this? How do we find the purpose of it and move forward with it?
Yeah. All right. Another one that some people may feel angry about is that there's a double standard, like where there's endless compassion expected of your, ex-spouse. Their behavior is explained all the time, and your reactions are pathologized. That's partly why our show is here, is to help you feel validated and acknowledge the things that you're going through are real. And it's not super simple or cutthroat, but there aren't very many programs or spaces out there that acknowledge that your reactions are normal to what you're going through. So you're going to come out of this and you're going to be like, damn, I've spent so much time focusing on their behaviors and having compassion for them and giving them, space for what it was they were going through. And then ignoring your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions and what you were going through. You're going to have some anger from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, the world likes to look at quick remedies. We love the idea of like these binary ideas where like, oh, you have an ailment, here's something for it. And so when it comes to this problem that you have, which is your relationship, well, you should be better now because you're out of it. Like, what do you stop with all this shit. Like, no one wants to hear it. No one wants to hear you cry and whine about all this. Like, it makes people really uncomfortable. Again, like it's more about them than it is you, because you're experiencing very normal emotions. But it's oftentimes like it's uncomfortable for people to have to deal with this like angry woman syndrome, where it's like, I don't want to have to deal with your grief and your anger and your disdain and your, this all these complicated emotions and things like that. But they'll look at the other person and be like, well, now they're going to die. Now they're like, they have nothing to live for. Like, now you've taken everything. And there's so much compassion for the other side of this a lot of the times. And then like these people will also, I've been there, and like there's, let you in on this, like there are people that go to like meetings and like 12-step groups and things like that. And like they will sit there and cry, and people will cry with them and for them, that like, oh my God, they've lost everything. Like, oh my God, how do you continue on? Without looking at the other side of that. And like that pain is also very valid. Not to say that theirs isn't, but like yours is too. It's just, it is a weird double standard kind of.
I think it's
because
crazy that self-preservation is not accepted.
I think that we like to think that the person who got out of the relationship got their remedy. Like, oh, well, you've got closure. No, you don't. It's like, you don't. Like, very seldom do people really feel great about leaving those kinds of situations.
Over time.
Some do, but not. I wouldn't say it's common.
Right. All right. Another one is going to be anger about the aftermath. So co-parenting issues, financial damage, family systems that still protect, your ex. There's going to be a lot of things that come in to play that just from your relationship that it's going to make you feel angry. Like the co-parenting thing. That's hard. There's a lot of people who don't want to remove themselves from these situations because the co-parenting situation is going to be even more complicated to deal with. But there are people who get through it. I will tell you that. There are people that get through it. Some amazing stories.
Yeah, there are people that get through it, man. And like, this is a road that no one really wants to walk down, right? But this is when, like we talked about SoberLink being a tool, like there are a million tools in family courts toolboxes that can keep your children safe. That's one of them. Like, you can also have plenty of grounds around what custody looks like. But I think what sucks is that you're right, the anger that like, I have to do this. Like, I have to keep managing this problem. It's doable. And I think you have to choose your hard here, right? Some people choose the hard, and not saying one's right or wrong, but like some people choose the hard that like, it's easier when they're within arm's length and I don't have to share the custody, like with my kids. I don't have to split up our retirement. I've worked my whole life. He's been out of work for 10, 15 years. Like, I'm not giving this shit up. I'm not giving him half. And so you choose that hard. For other people, they choose the hard that's like, co-parenting sucks, but it's a whole lot better than this other shit that we were doing.
Yeah.
At least I'm free. At least I can, have a relationship with someone else one day. I can get free from this toxicity. I can start to figure out what normal feels like, perks. What safety feels like. And so they're both hard.
Yep.
Pick your hard. And if you haven't tried this hard, maybe consider it.
Yeah. Okay. The last one that I wanted to talk about is that and I kind of talked about it earlier, is that you might feel angry because you're finally safe, because a lot of the times in these relationships, you're not allowed to have anger at all. Like, they will shut you down anytime you're angry, which is what you've discussed too, because it's more about them than it is about you and your anger. So now when you're out of it, you're having room. You have room to actually feel those feels. You have room and safe spaces to actually let it out. And it's going to feel really awkward, and it's going to suck, and it's not going to feel good, but it's going to be very important for you to go through that process.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to something that we've talked about in a nebulous way through probably all of our episodes, is that people in these situations don't want to be victims. People that have really been victimized don't want to be victims. I know that there's a lot of shit given to like the internet and like how people want to pathologize and act like victims. People who are victims don't want to fucking be victims.
Nope.
And so there are a lot of people that go through this on the other side of it, don't want to deal with any of this shit. They just want to walk forward. Like, they don't want to identify as someone who's had to heal. They don't want to have a healing journey. They don't want to have to do any of this shit. It's usually the people that haven't been through the shit that want to do that stuff.
Oh my God, it's so true. So when I started going to therapy, whenever you were about 4 years sober, it was a trauma specialist. And I was like, I didn't have trauma. Like, I don't have trauma. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm just depressed. I just have anxiety. I have panic disorder. I have all this stuff.
You tried to internalize it.
I did. I was like, I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to say that I had trauma. Even saying it now, I mean, it's fine now because I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what I went through, and it's important to name it. And it's important to say that, yeah, I was a victim of something. But it's not something that I wanted. It made me feel very like icky. It made me feel like, why was I in this position? Like, I didn't want to feel that way. But once I started dealing with it, naming it, recognizing it for what it is, seeing reality, that's when the freedom started to come out. That's when it's like, oh, damn, like that actually really did happen. What am I going to do about it? I don't stop there. And that's what I feel with a lot of people that are within our program and that are listeners. It's like, they don't stop at that. They don't want to be victims. They don't want to have that label on them. No. It's like, yeah, I know it's trauma. It's been hard. I know that I need to name it and the shit that I've been through, but they are so fucking strong and amazing. They're like, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to change this? What am I going to use it as fuel for? What is it teaching me? What are these lessons that I'm learning? And they're feeling the feels, and they're processing, and they're learning, and they're just naming it for what it is. And that's important. But like, we had somebody commented on one of your things recently about trauma and how it's been thrown out a lot. And we've been very big on that. Like, we know that trauma's been thrown out a lot. But like you said, we don't, those who have actually been traumatized don't really want to call it trauma. Like, it's really challenging for us to even put it into words that way.
Yeah, you don't want to identify as someone that's dealt with that. Like, a lot of times it's the people who haven't been as affected that give this stuff a bad name. Like, I've got a friend that did several tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and doesn't talk about this shit. And I asked him, like, we had, late one night, we're on one of our guide trips, and I was talking to him about like VFWs, like what goes on at those places. Is it just guys reminiscing about the things they've been through? He was like, man, what's funny is that people who have actually like been through the shit don't want to talk about going through the shit. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't like people who have really been in tough situations don't like to identify someone who is affected by that kind of thing. I think it's kind of similar to what we're talking about here, where people who have really gone through that kind of shit.
Well, it was really challenging for me to talk about this stuff for a while.
They don't want to make that shit their whole personality. No. They don't want to like identify with those kinds of problems.
Well, earlier when we had started this show, and it was kind of challenging to talk about these things because I didn't fully acknowledge the damage that had been done, know? And it's hard for people like me to go through that. Now I'm fine with it. Like, I've accepted it. I know what I've worked really hard to like heal those wounds and go through it and stuff. So it's really easier for me to talk about it.
Yeah, but still, I think that for you, and I think this is true for most of the people listening to the show, is that they would much rather consider themselves like a survivor. Than someone who was a victim.
Yeah. But we have to name it. We have to be honest with what has been going on, and that's part of the freedom, is to actually accept that and acknowledge it and like move forward with it without minimizing it. I was great at minimizing that shit. Okay. So how do you move through this anger? What do we do to get through it? How do we've talked about why we're angry. We've kind of gone off track a little bit. We've talked about the accountability trap. We talked about that earlier. And so I just kind of want to talk about real quick, how do you get through it? What do we do? It's basically what I just said about acknowledging it. Don't just suppress it. Let it out. Don't stay in it too long. Let that anger clarify your values. Let it tell you something. Recognize what you are angry about and what you don't want to deal with going forward. Learn how to trust yourself again. That's like the main goal, is to learn to trust yourself again so that you can understand what boundaries to put up, or or how you're going to live by your values or whatnot. And turning that anger into boundaries and into standards, like that it's telling you something. We always talk about how anger is there to tell you something. It's like a compass. It's telling you how to move. And it's telling you which values are being violated. And that's an empowering process.
Yeah, I think the first thing that you need is stabilization, and that generally involves space away from that situation as well. You're going to need some time and space away to really begin to gather kind of the reality and the understanding of what took place. We talk about self-care here a lot, and part of what self-care really is, it's about creating predictable routines in your life. And this is reestablishing safety. Go listen to my last Mindset Monday. I talked about the different parts of the brain that are affected in betrayal trauma. I talked about the hippocampal dysfunction or dysregulation. We talked about the amygdala. We talked about polyvagal nervous system rewiring, and all this stuff that really is measurably changed in people who have dealt with this kind of stuff. That stuff needs time and space away from those events that caused it in order to stabilize. Mm-hmm. And so you have to reduce your exposure to chaos, create predictable routines, simplify your life, and get back to basics. Start to exercise, eat healthy, take care of yourself again, start to, make your bed in the mornings, and do all the basic normal stuff that you would need to do on day one. Like all that stuff.
All of those categories: the emotional, physical, mental, environmental, spiritual support, community.
Yeah.
All those categories.
You need to get back to the basics and start to care for yourself again and create predictable routines in your life to start to create that safety. And then I think that we also have, reality validation, which is what I hope that you get here. I hope that you get this from the people that you choose to be part of this with you, whether that's a therapist or a coach, or maybe a spiritual guide of some kind, or if it's working through our course, Reclaiming You. That's kind of what Reclaiming You really does. Like when it comes to reality validation, that's one of the biggest things we do. We've got this acronym that we call VEER. And the first thing we do is we validate people, and then we educate people, and then we empower people, and then you show us what recovery looks like for you. You know, it's just it's a not so clean prescribed path. It's a little bit different for everyone with the same basics. But the first one is stabilization and validation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In our program, we help you learn how to trust yourself again. And you're also going to be surrounded by people going through very similar things. And it's important whenever you go through that anger phase, to have some supportive people around you who have been there and understand exactly what you're going through. During our calls that we have on Wednesday evenings with Matt and me, or Matt or me, and then the people going through the program, when people start going through the anger phase, I start to get a little excited underneath it. And I know that sounds really bad, but it means that you are going through the process in an important way, and you are utilizing the tools to get you through it. And you're learning how to live by your values. You're learning about your boundaries. You're learning about all those things. But that's what that anger phase is just really important, to be surrounded by people who are going through something similar.
Yeah. People have different paces at which they get to the place where I would say that like they're on their way to what the next 20 years of their life will look like and what it will be based on. But like, this is not a quick process. This is not something that will happen in 90 days. This is generally like the true integration of this takes years. I think that the first year is like when a lot of this work takes place. And then after that, it starts to make a little more sense every year that follows. But I think a year is a decent time period for like the integration of this stuff. And we talked about like the stabilization of your environment. It takes months and months and months and months to get used to. And then the reality validation piece of this thing, where you're no longer like, when you're now naming clearly and honestly what really happened, and beginning to write your own narrative without editing this stuff for fairness or protecting anyone else or anything like that. Like saying this harmed me without immediately softening it and having your experience mirrored by other people that get it. Like, this is very important when we talk about neuroscience here with your hippocampus. This is the part of your brain that really organizes memories. And this is your filing cabinet for all the events of your life. This is when you start to recreate a true coherent story for your mind. And this is what the path of healing will look like for people who don't have a clear like justice outcome, like you would, like for what our outcome was. You will have to start to, you'll have to validate yourself in a lot of ways. Validation closes the "was I crazy" loop, I think, that runs through your head over and over and over and over. And then sort of like phase 3 of this is meaning making without justification. This is kind of what we talked about, like Frankl. I think when I read Man's Search for Meaning, the most powerful takeaway was that meaning is not something that you receive, it's something that you create. And this is your own meaning that you create from your experiences. And it's a beautiful thing. This is what carries people through life, having gone through difficult experiences. And this is when you start to do that. You start to integrate this into your identity as you reconstruct your identity. And then you will, another part of this that I didn't mention, we talked a little bit about, is the grief that you will feel. You will have grief, and you will not get the benefit of reconciliation. We did a episode long ago with Dr. Diane Boss's work on complicated grief, grief without a resolution. That's going to be part of this. But I think the overarching goal of this is to create meaning and purpose, being authentically okay with what you've experienced, and walking forward. You will not necessarily be grateful for it, but in a lot of ways, you'll be grateful for the lessons that you learned along the way. Like, of course, there are better ways to learn lessons like this, but I think that it's through our most difficult times that we really figure out like what we're made of and how we make the best of this stuff, and how we walk forward, because you can't just quit. You don't get to quit. How do you let go, and how do you walk forward and you make meaning of it? And that's what this process really is for people who are never going to get a happily ever after, and they have this, this void that kind of hangs out in front of them. It's tough, man. It's really tough, and we empathize wholly and fully with people that go through this. It wasn't our outcome, and in the beginning, I think we felt guilty that we had a show that talked about this kind of stuff, even though we hadn't been there before. But no one else is talking about this shit. Someone's got to. but we'll be your voice. And we do have experience with it, just in different
Yep.
relationships.
Mhm.
And I know that there are levels to this shit, and maybe it's a bit different, but I think that it's applicable, right? I think that you can find meaning in this any way you choose. And I hope that you do take little bits and pieces from the show and things you learn elsewhere, and you start to really integrate the stuff in your life, and you can walk forward and you can find sense and purpose and meaning in all of this shit. And it doesn't just wreck you and destroy you for the next, 20, 30 years of your life, and that you're able to be happy again.
You can eventually get to there. I think you need to go through all of this first before you get there. Then.
Yeah, some people try to shortcut it. Some people will start to try to date after 3 weeks of this shit, and like it's not going to end well. It's not. Like, go for it. Good luck. It's not going to end well. You show up in a relationship with things that are unhealed, and you will fuck that person up too.
Yeah.
It's kind of a selfish way of going about healing, because you're not going to be able to show up for them in the way that they would deserve. You can't show up for yourself yet.
Yeah.
But people do it. They try. Good luck. That's all I would say. But
Just lessons learned.
yeah, that's how some people. If you're like me, you learn shit the hard way, and then it is what it is. But I think that's all we've got for this one. I think that concludes our anger series. I hope it's been helpful for you. I hope that you've got some answers to some of these anger questions. And as we look forward in the next year of content, this is a topic that we will probably revisit. I would like to do it again with a guest. I'll find an expert on anger, someone who really helps people integrate this stuff, and goal is to have more guests on this next year. Really would love to do that as we kind of gain new perspectives. And thank you guys for all the feedback too. Recently we had an Instagram story. What did you guys really take away from this last year? Like, what did you like? I don't think we asked what they didn't like, but a lot of people did tell us anyway. It was just the joy of social media. But we appreciate all the feedback, really. Like the good, bad, the ugly, everything. Like, appreciate you guys.
I wanted to know how people found us so that we could create some content to help others find us. Because I want to know what information and content like really resonated with them. I asked it in our community as well.
Yeah. Thank you guys for all the feedback. Thank you for the support.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
For us. We're just getting started. That's the way I say it. We're just getting started.
My word of the year next year is authenticity, which is so funny because we started this.
That was the first word.
We started our entire our group, our community when we first started it. The name of it, I think, Authenticity Wins, is what we have on our banner. Authenticity has always been a thing, but like I felt like I kind of I don't feel like I was 100% fully authentic. I don't think anybody is like fully 100% authentic, I guess.
I think you're always going to self-censor to some degree. You're always going to bend to what you think people want to see, especially whenever you're in a position like we're in, where you become the voice of a movement, really.
Correct.
And you're responsible for so many people and like what they take away and what they hear. You have to be prudent. You have to be responsible for the content that you deliver, and not just doing it from a biased perspective. And in some ways it does prevent you from being truly yourself and saying the shit you really think. And you do find yourself self-censoring a little more than you otherwise would, because you do have a responsibility and a duty to educate people that come here to you without knowing. Like, we're not trying to fuck anyone up.
Right. But see, like my personality, technically, I'm a pretty blunt and direct person. And I've held back a lot, which is not a bad thing because I'm an observer as well. Like I need to observe things before I become blunt and direct, or how I'm going to approach things. But next year, I just want to be more authentic with who I am and have more lessons in some ways, to where if I am more blunt and more direct and maybe I need to scale it back, I need to learn it. I need to learn in order to be like, I need to put myself out there a little bit more in order to learn. And I felt like I held myself back, and I have held myself back a lot. So next year, I just want to be more authentic. That's really where my word is going to go in everyday life, not just in the show or whatnot. Like, I just want to be real. I want to be me, because being real and authentic is like, it's very comforting to me, instead of trying to tiptoe around what other people want.
Right. I don't have a word yet. I'll think about it, or a resolution necessarily. I really just want to take this thing to the next level. Like, I read this book called Going Pro, and it talked about, like, if you're serious about something that you're doing, like, you really have to take the time to be great at it. It won't come by accident. And you can have a really half-assed something that you could sort of enjoy, or like, I don't have a speed like that. I'm either all in or I'm all out. So like, all in. And like, so what does like being pro look like? Like, booking more guests and like really coming prepared every single week for for episodes and having like doing the reading was supposed to be doing behind the scenes. Like I've really slacked on my reading and research and things like that. Partly because of the holidays, but that's just, it's because I also have another full-time career outside of this that takes a shitload of my time managing a big business. And so, like really wanting to focus in on this stuff. And
we may change our cadence back too as well soon.
Yeah. And
we're talking about that, releasing more episodes. I know that.
Yeah, this is my dream though. And I'm doing like what I think I was created to do here. And so I want to get better at it. And I want to make sure that you guys are getting something from it as well. That's what I want to do this next year. I don't know what that looks like yet, but we'll talk about it more as we kind of discuss the end of year, next year's plans. I think it's important that we reflect on the last year. All of us.
I have not done that yet.
Like an end of year review kind of thing. Like we've done the past couple of years, and talk about some of the high moments, low moments, and what we'd like to do differently. And I think it's important that you guys do the same stuff. And we talk about some of the funny stuff, and thinking about having our editor Matt Freight's on as well to talk about some of the stuff behind the scenes. Haven't fully fledged it out, but stay tuned. Some form of that will come.
Yep.
All right, that's all we've got. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Paige.
And we'll see you.
Bye.